Hi, this is Tutor and this is lesson 855. Title of today's lesson is the difference between hoax and prank. Okay, somebody wants a screenshot, do it now. Let's go right to it. Now, a hoax is meant to make people believe something false is real. It is usually of a more serious nature and on a large scale, as opposed to a prank. It often spreads misinformation or tries to manipulate opinion. Okay. Here are some famous hoax examples. All right, here's the first one. The balloon boy hoax was a hoax about a boy traveling uncontrollably at a high altitude in a homemade helium balloon. This wasn't that long ago. I don't know, was it about 10 years ago or something? It was widely reported on the news, and police cars were trying to follow it. So this definitely is more serious. There was a lot of people really nervous, thinking that there was a boy trapped on this balloon that was flying wildly in the air. It was reported all over the news. Police cars were following it, so it was actually taking up police time that's supposed to be used for real police work. So this was more serious. Now, we ended up finding out it was a hoax, that the father was an inventor and he wanted some free publicity for his inventions. But the little boy accidentally let it out. He admitted that his father told him to go hide. So this turned out to be a real hoax. Okay. All right. The second one here, War of the Worlds, Orson Welles hoax. Now this one actually might have been an accidental hoax. The news reported H.G. Wells' classic novel like it was an actual report in 1938 and caused mass panic. So it was actually a show that Orson Welles had, where he often read stories. And today he was going to read about Orson Welles, but with a little bit of a twist. He was going to do it like it was a real news report instead of just like reading the story directly. Now the problem is this was way back in 1938. This was before people had TV. This was before computers. So there was no way that people could confirm this report or not. And if you were at the beginning of the show, you knew that this was just for entertainment. It was no problem. But a lot of people, at that time, they might have turned it on in the middle. And the report sounded like a very real report, that the earth was being attacked by aliens and, they were blowing up this and blowing up that and humans were dying and screaming. And it caused a lot of mass panic. People were calling the police station, believing and thinking that they had seen real aliens. They're in my backyard, they're down the street, and people got in their cars and drove away. So this really caused mass panic. So it turned into a huge hoax, even though it may not have really meant to be one originally. Okay. All right. And our third example here is just once it's very common today on the internet. There are many hoaxes spread on the internet about celebrity deaths when they are not true. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they're just hoping that you click on it. Maybe somehow they can make some money from an advertisement, or maybe they're just doing it for fun. I don't know. But it turns out that most of these are not true. If you really see one of these, you should check other sources if you're really concerned. But most of them are, for a day or two, and then everybody finds out that it was nothing more than a hoax. It wasn't a real story. That celebrity did not die yet. Okay. All right, let's continue. Now let's compare pranks. Pranks can involve harmless office tricks. Putting fart bags on seats. Somebody might sit down and it sounded like they laid a big fart. Something like that. And then, of course, people might laugh. Putting sugar in salt shakers or vice versa. To see somebody, they're putting sugar in their coffee and then they say, oh, salt. Well, even though some people may not think that's funny because you might have ruined their coffee, but usually they just look to see a facial expression and then they laugh, and hopefully people just laugh it off, but it's meant as a prank. It's not that serious. Okay. Placing things like a fake bug, fake bugs, snakes, etc. on desks or chairs, fake cockroach, fake spider, fake snake, just to get somebody to scream, ah, something like that. Putting tape over the bottom of computer mouses, like on the bottom of it, and then trying to, what's wrong with this mouse? How come this mouse isn't working? Like that, until they, figure it out that somebody put tape over it, as a joke to see their reaction. So pranks are often done to see somebody's facial reaction so that they can laugh. Okay. All right, let's continue. Sewing all one's underwear together and so on, or sewing their socks together. Well, you would need to have access to it. So we might have heard this among college students, might do that to each other as a prank. Okay. All right, and so we really only have two examples here. Here's the first one. That celebrity death turned out to be an internet hoax. Nothing more. So it wasn't real. Number two, she likes to pull pranks on her coworkers on April Fool's Day. That would be the common day where the most pranks are pulled. Anyway, I hope you got it. I hope you got a better feel now of when you're more likely to use one of these terms instead of the other. Thank you for your time. Bye-bye.